Mishcon Academy digital sessions.
Hello, thank you for coming. I'm Emma Walcott. I'm a partner at Mishcon Academy, and on behalf of the Academy and of Mishcon's Pride Network, I am delighted to invite you to this digital event to celebrate LGBTQ Pride Month. I am delighted to introduce you to Bobbi Pickard, who is a senior project manager at BP and also the founder of Trans in the City. As co-chair of BP Pride's transgender group, Bobbi has been instrumental in changing the way that BP's level of awareness and education around transgender and non-binary issues is explored globally. She runs training and awareness sessions in schools and organisations up and down the country, and since lockdown has been delivering her training virtually. Bobbi, thank you for giving up the time. Can you tell me then what Trans in the City is and what its objectives are, and what motivated you to set it up?
So Trans in the City is an open collaboration between 80 organisations now, and those organisations range from Microsoft and Amazon and BP through all of the armed services. You know, some of our organisations have tens of employees, other organisations have hundreds of thousands of employees. And the whole goal of the organisation was to stop what I saw as a competition almost in terms of LGBT and especially transgender events, and really just make everybody collaborate. One of the main challenges I think for organisations is only 20% have gender transition guidelines or really any view of what to do with transgender people when they appear in their organisation. And of those 20%, there's very few that actually have a role model that they can use to really trigger trans awareness. So the whole idea was we just put everybody together and we share all of gender transition guidelines, we share all our role models, we share all our training, and we just give it all for free just because it's so important to raise that underlying awareness.
It's really clear that you've done your reading, that you've absorbed yourself in the research and the data. Could you just talk for a couple of seconds then about what makes people transgender?
Like lots of people, I've been driven by the why am I like this? And what's really plain is it's actually just a natural variation in human development, and the way it happens is in exactly the way our bodies are influenced in the womb and during puberty with estrogen and testosterone. As our brains develop, different areas of our brains are more or less receptive to estrogen and testosterone, and depending on the amount of those two hormones that we get as those areas of our brains develop, gives us different feelings. And there's about 5 different areas of the brain that we've identified now that generate our feelings of gender. And we can see when we inspect transgender individuals' brains, that in those individuals, that those areas of the brain that deal with their feelings of gender have developed in the way that they feel their gender, not in the way that they were assigned as their biological sex.
When we polled our community at Mishcon, we had a sizable response from people who identified as trans, non-binary, and rather not say, which actually matched, I think, somewhere close to the stats that you found across the general population, perhaps slightly higher.
So, I mean, this slide is really it's an amalgamation and an average really of lots of different surveys from around the world, and they really come out around about the same levels, about 5% of the population, and that is a growing percentage just because people are talking about it more, people are seeing transgender people out more and being a success, and that gives people confidence to come out.
Bobbi, I wonder if we can get a bit personal and talk a bit about your story. Tell me a little bit about your gender dysphoria and the tipping point for transitioning.
And as far as my brain's concerned, I'm female. So whenever I used to look in the mirror, my brain used to expect to see a female version of me, and it never did. And I could never recognize myself in the mirror. It creates a huge amount of disassociation in the world. When I was 14, was a really, really difficult time, and that was the first time that I really came close to taking my own life. And really after that was a real roller coaster. So I decided that I'd try transitioning, and almost immediately it was the best thing I'd ever done. It just felt like the hugest weight had been lifted off my shoulders. It's such a privilege just to be me.
Something in my eye, sorry. What do you think held you back from transitioning earlier in life?
It was an incredibly difficult thing to do in the 80s and 90s, and I think even the early 2000s. I think by the time we got to sort of 2014, 15, 16, I kind of felt actually that people were understanding transgender more. You know, Stonewall had stopped the big anti-trans rhetoric and actually come on board. And actually I felt that lots of people were feeling a bit tolerant towards trans people. And I guess that I was just lucky, actually, that both of those things corresponded at the same place.
I want to talk a little bit about media representation of trans and non-binary people. There was a consultation about the amending the Gender Recognition Act, and it was leaked last week that the government are dropping the proposed changes, or minded to drop the proposed changes. I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about what the process of transitioning involves now and what the reforms are aimed to do.
So transitioning is widely misunderstood. So lots of people assume that transitioning is gender confirmation surgery, and it's not. It's anything a trans person does to alleviate their feelings of gender dysphoria. And the way you do that is to make yourself match your internal view. So only about 25% of transgender people actually go as far as gender confirmation surgery. So there's a wide spectrum of transitioning, as you kind of expect, because there's a wide spectrum of transgender people. The Gender Recognition Act, as it is, really only gives legal protection to those people that have a gender recognition certificate. And the process of getting a gender recognition certificate is incredibly long-winded and difficult. Really, the changes to the GRA were to extend protection to non-binary people and to make the process of the gender recognition certificate easier. But, you know, it was blown up as, well, we're going to allow trans women into women's only spaces. And there was a lot of noise around self-identification. You know, all of a sudden, transgender people would just be able to say that I'm female and they're female, and then that's all that needs to be done. That's already the case. You know, I don't have a gender recognition certificate. I have a female passport. I have a female NHS number. I have a female driving license. My whole life is female.
One of the instances where people are most concerned about self-identification, or the risk that people might identify as trans and later change their mind, is with young people. Now you are a trustee at Mermaids, which is a charity that supports the families of young people who are transitioning or questioning their gender identity. Talk to us a little bit then about Mermaids and what is done to ensure that young people, their interests in the round are safeguarded.
In terms of treatment of young children, it's very limited. You know, before a child reaches puberty, there's no treatment other than counselling and allowing that child to express as their chosen gender. All we're doing is letting children that consistently say that they're trans, that consistently identify as being trans, express themselves how they want to express. So if parents don't support children, if organisations don't support children, if schools don't support children, then 50% of those children will attempt suicide. If we do support them, then the suicide rate is 4%. Just for letting children express how they want to express. When children do reach puberty, there is the option, if the child and family and the consultant think it's appropriate, to go on puberty blocking drugs. And that gives those trans children that are still identifying as trans at that point just a break from imminent puberty. Because I can tell you, if you are trans and you go through puberty, it's catastrophic. It's not about getting a young child that identifies as trans at 2 or 3 to transition. It's to get the right outcome for that child, whether that's to transition or not.
Could you talk just a little bit about COVID-19 and the lockdown and the kind of impact on the trans and non-binary community? How you personally and the trans community have experienced lockdown and what it's meant for you both personally and professionally?
It has been incredibly difficult, I know, for lots of trans people. And the obvious thing is, in terms of the medical transitioning, then obviously all of that stopped. And I know the waiting list currently for NHS treatment before COVID was around about 3 years, and it's probably significantly more now. And that's for the first appointment, but it's more subtle than that really for trans people. Because things like, especially for trans women, for instance, hair removal, facial hair removal, is something that's a cumulative effect. So if you're having electrolysis, then it starts off extremely hard because the hair is well rooted and mature, so it's extremely painful, and there's a hell of a lot of it. And then as you go on, it becomes easier and easier. Having a 6-month gap now means that all of that's back to square one again. So everybody that's going through that will be going through excruciating pain again. It's been incredibly difficult for me personally in lockdown, because the more I found I was isolated, then the more I found myself doubting that I was doing as well as I was. But I did realise that actually lots of people know so little about transgender that they don't even want to be seen associating with it, be seen going along to a trans course. And the lockdown has given us that great opportunity to do the course online so people can view it in complete privacy in their own homes. I'm a firm believer, if you can just tell one person the truth, then that person, if they tell 2 or 3 people, then that has to make an impact. Giving transgender rights don't take rights away from everywhere else. It just makes the world a bigger and better place, and that's where we need to be. Lots of things, not just transgender.
You're completely right. That's beautiful. We've come up against time, and I'm afraid we haven't got time for any more questions, but I'm so grateful that you have shared your story, some of your insights and your time with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and it's been great talking to you.
The Mishcon Academy Digital Sessions. To access advice for businesses that is regularly updated, please visit mishcon.com.